Kathleen Weddle, and I'm a senior here at Covenant Christian High School. And I'm going to be doing my speech on civic engagement within the U.S. economy. As the Constitutional Convention of 1787 came to a close after 3.5 months of deliberation, a lady asked Dr. Franklin, "Well, doctor, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy?" "A republic," replied the doctor, "if you can keep it." This ever-famous anecdote illustrates the beginning of our country's form of government, the beginning of our economy, and the beginning of the definition of a citizen of the United States. The 3 questions that are required to answer are: what have we done with civic engagement in our U.S. economy throughout history? What will we do, and what do we need to get there? In today's world, civic engagement is most likely considered to be community service and volunteering, but I don't think that's what the Founding Fathers believed that we needed, what we needed to have. Civic engagement in the beginning, our form of government was a republic, and that required the consent of the governed, but not only the consent of the governed, but also their active participation, and that is their civic engagement. The republic ensured freedom for all those people, but that is not achieved without the involvement of the citizens, their civic engagement. The Founding Fathers were extremely pessimistic about this new form of government, not only because they knew of the failures in the past, but also because they understood human nature. In that time, civic engagement was considered sacrifice for the community. The economy in the beginning was mostly agricultural. It was a self-sufficient with farming, imports, exports, and trading. It grew to have some industries like sawmills and shipyards. In the time of the colonies were divided into 3 regions, which kind of 3 economic regions. And the first region was New England, which was shipbuilding and sailing. Maryland, Virginia, and the Carolinas consisted of plantations that grew tobacco, cotton, indigo, rice, and cocoa beans, mostly agricultural. And then New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware were general farming and fur trading colonies. When the new nation was created and the colonies became the United States, the economy became a unified common market, and this meant that there was going to be no internal tariffs or taxes on the interstate commerce, which meant that there was going to be no taxes when you traded across state borders, maybe from trading with England and other countries, but not with states. Alexander Hamilton was the first Secretary of Treasury, and he created the first bank of the U.S. in 1791. He believed in a strong central government, and also he believed that economic growth should be pursued through diversified shipping, manufacturing, and banking. Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, Hamilton's rivals, opposed a strong central government in pretty much everything that Hamilton believed in. When Jefferson became president, he favored a more decentralized government focusing on protection of the common citizen from political and economic tyranny. He considered farmers the most valuable citizens because of the agricultural economy of the time. Madison then became president, and he did away with the bank, the U.S. Bank, created by Hamilton, but because of the War of 1812, he had to bring it back out of necessity. Now, taking a jump to the 20s, 30s, and 40s, civic engagement during that time was at an all-time low. All-time high, sorry. This time was, that generation was considered the greatest generation, and also the most educated generation. And because of that education, it produced more civically engaged citizens. Post-World War I, the war stimulated all the industries in the economy and created a temporary prosperous economy. Taxes were reduced, tariffs raised, and the debt was reduced to 1/3 of the U.S. debt before it. Consumerism boomed, tourism flourished, everything boomed, but then the stock market crashed in October 1929, and this ensued the Great Depression. Unemployment rates was at an all-time high of 23.6%, and the industry was in the worst shape that it had been since it was created. Roosevelt's New Deal and the Roosevelt's New Deal policies and World War II pulled the U.S. out of this Great Depression. Civic engagement today is not what it was when the Founding Fathers created the Republic. There are only two acts of citizenry that are suggested in the U.S. today, and that is voting and paying taxes. Last time anything else was asked of U.S. citizens of the United States was in 1973, and that's when the draft was ended. Polls show that even though confidence in our government is at an all-time low right now, civic engagement is at an all-time high, which is kind of ironic. But that's because the individual civic engagement has increased in recent years, not as a form of public service, but because the recent confidence in the public institutions has decreased. And this reason for civic engagement is not the recipe for a republic that the Founding Fathers created. The economy today, from 1994 to 2000, was a really prosperous time. The unemployment rate dropped below 5%, and the stock market soared. But in 2001, 9/11 is said to have triggered the recession that we are in now. There was a booming housing market, which fueled a false perception of security in the economy, but that market collapsed last year, 2008, along with the construction industry. Banks went bankrupt. AIG and Citigroup insurance companies were bailed out by the government. The government also issued a $700 billion bailout and a $787 billion stimulus. And the government took control of many of the large banks, and the big three, including GM and Ford, hit troubles and were on the verge of bankruptcy. What will we do to pull ourselves out of this civic engagement, all-time lows rate of civic engagement? We need individuals willing to stand up in their community to better their own lives, but also lives around them. And we need to look to ourselves and our communities to help ourselves, and not look to our government to solve the problems. And I want to go back to, I don't know how many of you listened to President Obama's speech last night, but he sent out a call of unity for our communities in the United States to become unified so that we can help ourselves out of this recession. He also said that the last act of unity in the U.S. was September 11th terrorist attack, and that was 8 years ago. There shouldn't be that big of a gap within our civic engagement of individuals in our communities.